Hello and welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. My next guest is the global customer growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce and Wall Street Journal's best-selling author of GrowthIQ. She was recently named in the Thinkers 50 ranking of management thinkers. She is a top influencer in customer experience, digital transformation, the future of work, and sales. She was recently recognized as one of Inc. magazine's 37 sales experts you absolutely must follow on Twitter. A LinkedIn top 50 B2B sales expert in 2019, Brand Quarterly magazine's 50 marketing thought leader, and one of the most powerful and influential women in California, according to the National Diversity Council. So it is my great honor to welcome Tiffani Bova to Scale Your Sales podcast. Welcome, Tiffani.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's wonderful speaking to you. I can't, it must be about 6 years since we actually physically met. So thank God for the virtual world to have you with me now. So I want to jump into your incredible book. You know that I've read it because I kept raving about it. GrowthIQ. Now, let me tell you why I think it's absolutely incredible. I absolutely agree with you that there isn't one strategy. It's a whole host of strategies. They're like pulling different levers. And I've never read a book until I came across yours that really brought that to life. Most books have one big idea and they write a long book and repeat the same idea from all different angles. But actually, you are really talking about the real life of a business. And it's not that easy out there, but there are things you can do. So I really commend you for writing an incredible book, The GrowthIQ.
Well, thank you. You know, I'll tell you this, it was a daunting task. I am a talker, not a writer. And as a salesperson, recovering, I like to say, because I no longer carry a quota, it was really something that I wanted to do, but I didn't even know where to begin. So what I did was I read kind of 60 or 70 really of the best business books ever written over a course of maybe 2 years. And I learned a lot from doing that, you know, all the way from, you know, the good to greats and innovator's dilemma to blue ocean strategy, you know, kind of crossing the chasm, like, you know, kind of all those that leaders and executives claim to be the books that have shaped their careers. And I realized that I wanted to write a book I would want to read, and it took me in a very different direction. I did 30 stories instead of one long story stringing out. It was more visual because I'm a visual learner, not a read learner. So I tried to make it more visual. And, you know, I tried to say it in short bursts because I have a short attention span. And so, you know, someone could read the story and put it down and pick back up the book and pick right back up and not go, what did I read, you know, 3 weeks ago or something like that. So I worked really hard on the structure and the feel of the book. And, you know, I appreciate the comment because I worked really hard on it. I was like, if I can get over that hump, you know, the publishing industry says if you can get somebody to read past the 40th page, you've got them. And so my goal was to get them to read the whole book.
Yeah, well, you certainly did that with me. And, you know, I wanted to delve into a few areas in the book. But I really like what you say that you wrote the book that you wanted to read. Which is
well, yeah, because I'm kind of the target audience. I mean, in my old roles, someone who ran sales or someone who ran marketing or customer service or strategy or go-to-market models, you know, is really sort of thinking about how will a business grow in the future. Like that, I was speaking kind of to somebody who felt like me in my past lives. And so, you know, I know that we don't have enough time in the day to sit down and, or in a week, you know, and read a 250-page, very heavy and densely content written book. It's tough, you know, or you could listen to it. So I have the Audible as well, but you know, you lose all the visuals. So I worked really hard on it.
Yeah. Well, you know, When I first picked up the book, I having done an MBA, I recognized the Ansoff matrix, which is very relevant today. But I think what you've done is you've brought it right up to date into the 21st century and used all of the modern levers and areas that we talk about, and you're an expert in, customer experience being one of them. But earlier we were talking about how sales has evolved. And it's evolved very much like your career as well, in that sales used to be a function of like any other function in the business, but actually it's not about sales, it's about revenue generation, which is the actual core to the business, and part of that is being really customer centric in order to ensure that you have a sustainable revenue and working in partnership. And I think your book very much replicates that, as it does in the way that you've managed your career.
Well, what I tried to do was I said, look, what products you sell is interesting for you. How you sell them is very sort of process oriented also for you. But how your customers feel when they engage with your brand at any level is what's really important. And the tip of that spear is usually sales. And that could be a human seller, an online seller, right? There's so many ways that, quote unquote, the act of selling happens today. But that act of selling has to deliver this feeling of engagement and personalization, and also trust, and making sure that the customer feels like you know them. And so it's really important that at that tip of the spear that you're performing at a high level, because if not, you're just not going to get them into your brand family. And then you don't have an opportunity to deliver them delightful customer support because they're not even a customer. So if you don't start at the beginning and you make it about that customer who is buying from you versus how you want to sell and how you want to go to market and what you are selling, that is very product-led and not customer-led. And that is very challenging for brands to switch and companies to switch. And more importantly, it's very difficult for sales organizations to switch that mindset, because they're very much organized, if you will, and measured and managed by how much they sell. So sometimes it's a conflict. Like, what's best for the customer may actually be, do not sell them what you sell.
Yeah.
That might be the best for the customer. And if you actually said, you know what, I think we're just not right for you, and the customer goes, what do you mean, right? And then you really say to them, look, I've listened to everything you said, I just don't think we're right for you. That level of trust you've just gained, you could never buy. And then the next time they'll come back to you, because they'll be like, if it's not right, I trust they will tell me that. Yeah. And walking away from a deal is very, very hard. And so that's why doing what's best for the customer as the primary goal gets very challenging.
Very, very challenging. So much so, how would you even begin to move from a product focused business and sales team to a customer focus? And I know that you've talked about this in the book, but perhaps you can give us some indication here.
Yeah, I'd say the first thing I'd do is understand, are you product-led or are you customer-led? And what you may think, the person who's listening to this podcast and then says, well, I think we are customer-led, let's say, and you're a manager or you're a executive, go ask your team, what do they think? And if everybody comes back with the canned expected right answer of, well, of course we're customer-led, I then would say, go ask your customers what they think. Do your customers think that your salespeople just sell at all costs? That you're constantly trying to upsell and cross-sell them, that you're not taking the time to understand how and why they're using your products, that it's all about price, that it's all about volume. And you get this feel that, wow, my understanding and reality, there is a gap. Now, I'm not saying the customer's 100% right or you're 100% wrong. I'm saying then it lies somewhere in the middle. And so I would say, take a quick test and just walk around and say, hey, and don't ask that question that way. Like, do you think we're product-led or customer-led? Like, you have to literally say, do you think we do what's right, best for the customer, even if it means walking away from a deal? And if all your salespeople say, you know, absolutely not, like I won't walk away from a deal, then you know for sure that you're product led.
Yeah.
And so I'd say start inside, but you have to then balance that out with outside, or start outside and then find out inside. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's making sure that those two answers come closer and closer and closer together. And just because you are in customer led, you need to be employee first. So you have to make sure that you're enabling your teams to do what's right and best for the customer, meaning the tools they have, the systems, the processes, the compensation plans, the training, the onboarding, all those things have to be in place, because your customers will only be as happy as your employees. And if your sales team is not happy, it will reflect in your customers, and then same thing on service. So I would say that the best way to do it is, I'm going to take this from Tom Peters, who wrote In Search of Excellence, and say that it's really by management, by wandering around. Like you have to go ask your people, and then you have to talk to customers.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so how do you feel the sales environment has shifted with, you know, buyers gaining more power, buyers and customers? What do you think is actually working and what isn't? And I know, again, your book is like a Bible, really. You know, you've given lots of examples, but perhaps you could give us some here.
Yeah, so I'd say this. I'd say as salespeople, you know, when I started out my career selling technology 25 years ago, uh, we held all the power. We knew the information. We were able to give the demos. We'd have to show up and give the demos. We knew what the pricing was. We had the list of customers that were going to be a reference. Like we held all the cards, and we would give them out slowly to the customer based on sort of our sales process and the stages and the funnel and all the things that we were trained to do. And as the internet started to take off, that power shift started to change a little bit, right? Where now customers could demo potentially products online or see them. They could check pricing, they could read reviews, they could find references all on their own. And that meant that sales then had to change. What is the value I bring to the table? If I'm no longer bringing the value of sort of price, product, speeds and feeds and demonstration, like what's my value? And some sellers have held strong to the way that they've always sold and haven't been able to really shift to say, my value may be knowing an industry that my customer is in really well, or knowing the trends, or coming and sharing with them that the 3 other clients that you have that are in different industries are trying this and that, and these are really working, and really being a partner for them in their success. And your solution is a part of that. And, you know, just because I'm speaking with a very selling technology tone, you could, you know, translate that across the board. If you're in manufacturing and hospitality, you know, you're always want to make sure that your customers are successful. So I'd say that power shift has forced sales to step up. I think it's also forced sales to be more willing to use technology than they have in the past. Like it can't just be your contact manager, your pipeline entry, your forecasting tool. It needs to be your partner in crime. Like what you put in is what the value you get out. And the most successful sellers I see today are very good at human and technology. They don't just rely on human. And that's where the high performers live, is in that world where they let technology take some of those daily things off their plate as well. It's kind of like their coach on the sideline saying, hey, listen, here's your next best action. Here, this client is more likely to buy. And I think once you start to trust that as a seller, I think it's freeing because, you know, you get to take advantage of what's in the market today.
Yeah, it's interesting that there seems to be some threat that buyers now don't need salespeople, that if they could, they would want to kind of completely cut them out of the deal. But actually, it seems that the better the salespeople are, the more their services are required as advisors and partners in creating or co-creating the best deal.
Yeah, and I tell you from a comment, this is a CSO statistic, but they say that the quota attainment has been going down or flat over the last 5 years, and still it's in the middle 50% range of an entire sales organization. Half will miss quota. And our research shows 66 or so percent of a seller's time is spent on non-selling activities. So the goal would be, how do you carve 10%, 20% of their non-selling time, give it back to them to sell? The only way you can do that is by using technology and automate some of that. Now, it isn't an even one-to-one, meaning if you take away 10%, you're going to get 10% on quota attainment. But if you take away 10%, you're going to get something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% lift. And if you have a large enough sales team and you have 10 people and you get everybody to increase quota attainment by 3 or 4 or 5%, you'll be a hero with no more additional headcount.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, when companies start to see their sales slow down, they do one of three things. One, they hire more salespeople, they spend more marketing money, or they cut costs. And adding heads just adds more cost. So if half your sellers are missing, if your seller is missing half their quota number, either your number is wrong or a little, inflated, or there's room for improvement with the team you already have. And why not focus there? Because they've already, they have a much better and easier opportunity to have impact in quarter than if you hired someone new.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been talking about team and their talent. So I'd like to ask you about your career and how you have seen diversity change in the industry. Because when you started, I would imagine that you were often the only woman in the room, and you must have seen a lot, but I wonder if you feel that there is more to do.
Well, I always I had the belief that if I was going to take on any career, that I wanted to become a student of that career or of that profession. So when I was, an individual selling rep, when I began, I was selling into the legal industry. So I wanted to go and attend the, law technology event. I wanted to read the, being in the States, the American Law 100, like, what are those law firms doing? Like, reading everything I could about what are the trends in that particular industry. And back then it was, read a magazine. There wasn't, everything wasn't on the internet.
Yeah.
And, I had to buy lists, like, who are the top law firms, and then, build out an account plan and enter them all into my individual user license of ACT, and, by hand enter them. And then as I started moving up, I took that with me. So I would say, from a career perspective, every time I was faced with a new opportunity or a new challenge, I just dug in to say, how much can I learn about it? Who can I ask? Who can I talk to? Who can I learn from? And walk into customers and just listen a lot. And as salespeople, we tend to talk a lot. So listening a lot, it was a skill I had to continue to work on. It's not perfect even yet today, but I think ultimately I'd say that once I made that decision, I was much more comfortable and confident in approaching things I didn't know how to do, because I felt like it's okay. I can learn. I may not be, perfect at it, but I will learn and then figure out what I'm not able to do, or I am able to do, and how do I continue doing that. And I think throughout my career, like starting in sales, and then I was given marketing. Well, I had to learn that whole sort of, profession, if you will. And then I took over customer service. I took over a call center, which I'd never done before. And I was early in the internet, which, nobody even knew that terminology. It was called the World Wide Web then. It was very different. It was constantly learning. And then I decided I wanted to be an analyst for a decade. And that was jarring to me because it was so different for me from a skill set perspective. And then, I was offered the opportunity at Salesforce to sort of marry all those skills together, the analyst part of my life, the selling and marketing and customer service and executive side of my life, and the advising side. And so I was able to pull all those things I'd learned along the way and create this, dream job, if you will, for me. So I'd say at each pivot, I was very uncomfortable. I had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I had to be willing to learn.
Which is the DNA of a true entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur.
Yes and no, but funny enough, like, I'm not an entrepreneur. Like, I don't have my own business. Like, You have your own, I don't have my own business, right? I work for a Fortune 500 company in the US. I behave a little bit like an entrepreneur internally, but I've never worked for myself. And that's one of those things that like, I realize that I am not an entrepreneur. I don't have that risk quotient. And so if I can help entrepreneurs, that's the way I live vicariously through them.
Yeah, yeah. But then, you have this term of intrapreneur, really, and that lots of large businesses try and mimic that kind of mindset of people that are not are comfortable being uncomfortable, that have an open, a growth mindset, that are willing to try new things and innovate and, almost make a fool of themselves in order to do things and have real passion. These are the things that large companies are really trying to galvanizing in their employees or buy it in, and I'm sure there's some of that in you.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But I think, often people come up and they go, why don't you just work for yourself? I'm like, why would I do that? Like, like why would I go and do that? I mean, I work for an amazing company with a great brand. And I mean, we stand for so many things from a value perspective I agree with. I get to talk about the things I'm passionate about every day. I get to talk with people like you, Janice. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, why would I do that?
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit crazy. I do ask myself, why am I doing this?
But you enjoy it, right? Otherwise you wouldn't do it.
I do. And after a while, you kind of get the feeling, I've heard lots of other entrepreneurs say that they're kind of unemployable. And it's just that feeling that once you've been out of a system, of an organization, it's really difficult to slot back in again. So you feel that you won't fit and you don't want to follow rules and things. And I know that I am an entrepreneur, because I remember when I was perhaps about 15, I got a sense that I didn't like people telling me what to do. And I think that is I've read that is another kind of indicator of an entrepreneurs, that wants to create their own systems rather than live in other people's systems. And that's very, very much me. So yeah, I don't think I can change my DNA now. That's how it is.
That's okay. You're doing great. We're doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. So tell me about what one tried and tested strategy that you would offer our listeners.
Oh, so that's a great question. And I'll tell you why. Because, during the decade that I was at Gartner, that would be the question. Like, what's the one thing we can do this quarter to turn sales around and have impact, this quarter? Or, we have to fix this. And what's the one thing we can do? And like, I had this little, glass ball, and I would sort of rub it and go, here's the one thing you should do. And what's interesting is I used to answer that like, here's the one thing I would do.
Yeah.
Now I don't do that. And it actually came out of the work from the book GrowthIQ. Was the one thing about growth is it's never one thing.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible answer for somebody who's really struggling and looking for the one thing. Like, I'm really looking for the one thing. But here's what I tell you. Because you have, who are, the listener, right? You are you. You are your brand. You have your products. You have your customers. You have your selling team and support team. Like, you are unique. There's no other you out there. And so the question then becomes, for me to answer that, not knowing what I call context, which is, what is your product? What is your brand? Who are your customers? Once I know those things, I then would say, let's go ask your customers, what's the one thing that you're either not doing that you should be doing, or that you're doing and they wish you would do more of or do it better. Then you can come back and go, gosh, we were going to chase all these 5 new things. And lo and behold, our customers would actually buy more of what we're currently doing if we just did these 3 or 4 things. That has far faster impact. But I'll sort of put that up against the fact that it's natural that we want to go do something new, that we want to, what's working now is not going to work in the future. So we're just going to abandon all of it and go do something else. And in the book, I use an example in the United States when they were coming from the east to the west looking for gold. It was the big gold rush in the West Coast. in California that they were coming into California, and let's just say they were mining for gold, or, you know, in Africa, they're mining for diamonds, and they find one. They find a diamond, they find some gold. They don't say, well, that's interesting, let's go find another mountain. That's not what they say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what they say is, I'm going to go get everything I can out of this mountain, all the gold, all the diamonds. And then while I'm doing that, someone else can go and find the next mountain. So when this one's done, we have a next place to go.
Mm.
But instead, and so for sellers listening, what I'm telling you is sell into your base, customer service, sell into your base, executive, sell into your base. It's the gold you already have, the diamonds you already have. Don't ignore it. And so unfortunately, we tend to spend a lot of time on net new logos and how many new leads have come in the pipeline and what's all the new, and we ignore the existing customers. So if I had to pick one, I would say I would start with your current base of customers.
Yeah.
Spend time, understand, would they buy more? Would they buy more frequently? Do they want other things from you? And simultaneously have a small little sort of group. And if you're a very small business, it could be a person sort of looking, what do they think is next? And then ask your customers. Now, they might say, you know, what do you want? Do you want a car? They'd say, no, we want faster horses. Like, I understand that customers don't always know what they want, but you have to start there, going back to one of your original question on being customer centric. Like,
Yeah.
I can't answer that for you unless you let me loose and go talk to 100 of your customers. Then I can come back and tell you, here's the one thing I'd do. But for me to just, you know, make the, you know, presume that I know the answer because 10 other people did this doesn't mean it's going to work in your business.
Mm.
So I've changed that answer, although I used to just answer it very quickly. That's now how I answer it.
I really want to pick up your podcast, that What Next? It's a great title, and I would really urge listeners, if they've really enjoyed listening to this, then please do go over to Tiffani's podcast, because there's more of that, and you have great guests on there and fantastic conversations that are really kind of add a lot of breadth to your thinking. So I'd certainly do that. So this is my last question. If you were on a desert island, what's the one thing, we've talked about one thing quite a few times, but what's the one thing you would take with you?
Well, I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I didn't leave until I was 30. So I feel like, you know, I've spent a lot of time on an island. And I go back all the time. My family's still there. Like, I go home as much as I can. I like to say my home is in Hawaii and my home airport is Los Angeles. So that's my way of not feeling like I've totally moved away. But I ask this question as well to many friends of mine at dinner parties. Like, it's a great conversation piece. I'll say, if you were stuck on a desert island, who would you put on your playlist? If you only could pick 3, like a band, a singer, or whatever. So because that tends to be my question, I'd say I would bring my, you know, iPod or some, you know, something that would give me music. And then the challenge is you'd have to whittle it down to 3 because it could give you 3. And then you're like, well, so do I bring like Beethoven? And then, you know, they got a big catalog, because you can't pick an artist that has a song. You have to, you know, because if you're stuck, you might have to listen to the same music a lot. So I would say, you know, music, because it could get you through, you know, the good days and the bad days. You know, outside of the obvious of food and shelter and Wi-Fi, but you know,
well, you're on an island, you're going to have to forage for
yeah.
all that, but
yeah, at least you got some music.
Exactly. Whistle while you work. So Tiffani, how can the listeners get hold of you?
Well, you know, I love to engage with people online. So either on LinkedIn or Twitter, I'm active on both. As you mentioned, kind enough to mention my podcast, What's Next? I have some amazing guests on there. It's really an extension of conversations of interesting people I meet along the travels that I have every year. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, I hope if you see me at an event, you walk up and say hi, and that you heard this conversation and tell us what you thought.
Excellent. Tiffani, it's been an absolute honor. I can't wait to see you again. Hopefully it won't be another 5 years. It must be sooner. And it'll be lovely, and perhaps on Hawaii. That will be even better.
Even better. I think we need to have a sales conference there.
Yeah, I'll be the first in line. Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Thank you for having me.